Hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm 9 years sober. I continue every day to look to help others, to give back to those who have helped me, and to the community that's given me everything back into my life.
I'm Heather Champion. I'm a licensed mental health counselor with a private practice. I met Ben while working at an outpatient treatment center called The Retreat that's not here anymore. We've maintained our friendship since then and enjoy taking time to talk about therapy and our lives as champions.
Disclaimer: the content of this video is intended for informational use only. It is in no way intended as a replacement for medical or psychological advice. Should you have a medical or psychological issue, please consult with a medical professional.
Alrighty. So, hey everybody, this is the Real Champions podcast. I am Heather Champion.
Benjamin Champion.
And today I wanted to take some time to talk about something that I did last week. I went on a cruise for CEUs with the Creative Wellness Collective. The Cruise for CEUs was organized by a lovely gentleman by the name of Joel from Float On Counseling. If you have any issues with fear of flying, Joel has a program. I'm going to put the QR code up there for you so that you can scan it and get into his practice. But he has a very specific program that he uses to help people with their fear of flying. And if you want more information, you can go to their website at floatoncounseling.com. I also want to give a quick shout out to the Creative Wellness Collective, Amy and Kerry, who organized, Float On Counseling, they organized the ship on the cruise that we went on, and then the actual training was done by what I just said, a Creative Wellness Collective, Carrie and Amy, who organized. They do soccer. They are psychodramatists and they teach psychodrama. So back in December, I got to do one of their workshops in Amy's office. And I had already signed up for this cruise because I really wanted to like get a better understanding of psychodrama, and I knew that participating in psychodrama would probably help me through some stuff that I'm dealing with. I am turning 50 later this year, and decided, right? I think, Ben, we've kind of talked about this, that this is the year I really want to start working more so on myself and kind of remove some of those roadblocks that I tend to come up against. So, I went on to this cruise to help myself with my fear of being seen. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about myself, something that happened quite a few years ago. I went to a training at the Kripalu Institute in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. If you're unfamiliar with Kripalu, it's a beautiful place. It's in the extreme western edge of Massachusetts, right on the border of New York, really close to Albany, if you're familiar with that area. In any event, it was a trauma sensitive yoga training, and this was happening in the very end of October, early November 2012. And if we all remember 2012 in the Northeast, that time of year was a very, very bad storm called Sandy was hitting at that time. So there was a massive storm outside. I lived on Long Island at that time, and I was kind of worried about my home and everything that was going on back home. And I was in the Berkshires at a training event that was trauma sensitive. So I was learning how to do trauma sensitive yoga for a week. It was a 40-hour training while this massive storm is like pounding the building that I'm in and also my home. All my friends and my family members were being pounded even worse than we were up in the Berkshires. So I was a little on edge, we can say, right? A little bit on edge. And Bessel van der Kolk, who this is right around the time where he released The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if it was right before or right after, but he had a lot to do with the development of trauma sensitive yoga, and he wrote the foreword in the book, Trauma Sensitive Yoga, and came to do the keynote speech. Not sure if he was meant to stay that night or not, but because the storm was so bad, he did stay the night. He didn't go back to Boston that day. If you're unfamiliar with Mr. Bessel van der Kolk, he is the person who is credited with an enormous amount of research in trauma, kind of coined the term complex trauma. And he wrote the book, The Body Keeps a Score, which was a New York Times bestseller for quite some time. It is probably my favorite book on trauma, and being somebody who works a lot in the field of trauma, I see Ben's looking up to see what that is. Um, I was, we had used the book Traumatic Stress as our textbook for my trauma course. So I knew his name already, and I'd already done a bunch of research, and used some of that research in my own kind of work as a student. So I was very familiar with the name. So when he was there, I was like, oh my goodness, Bessel van der Kolk is here. And I went to go have dinner by myself. It was Corpalo has cafeteria style dining. So you go in, you pick up your food on your little tray, and you go sit down. And I went early to make sure there wasn't any crowds or anything because I don't like crowds. And I walked in, and there was Bessel van der Kolk sitting with a few people at a table. And I was so nervous. So I walk around with my tray, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I could go sit with Bessel van der Kolk, and I could actually meet this like incredibly famous person in a field that I'm really interested in studying more of. And so I finished getting my food. I'm kind of standing maybe about 10 feet away from the table, and I'm looking over, and he makes eye contact with me, and he smiles, and he motions for me to come on over. At which point I turned on my heel and I ran to the opposite end of the cafeteria and ate my dinner there. So I look back on this event, right? Like this was a great opportunity for me as a budding young therapist at that time. That I could have sat with somebody that I truly admire. And I always think about like, where would my career be had I sat there? There was a part of me that really wanted to go and have that conversation with him. But there was also a part of me that was screaming like danger, 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 and made me run away, right? And so that's where I kind of want to start to talk about parts work. Because there's a branch of psychotherapy that's called internal family systems, where we break ourselves down into parts. And we can kind of use that story to talk about the different parts that are going on, right? That are kind of like that are coming up at that point in time. So the danger, danger, danger part, right, is the part that we call the firefighter. Our firefighters jump in to fix things when it senses danger, but doesn't always do the best job of it, right? If we're having a really hard time and we have some of those types of like moments where we do something stupid, like walk away from a preeminent mind in the field that you want to be, an expert in, and run away and go and hide in a corner. That's probably where my firefighter is sensing danger, where this probably could have been interpreted as a safe situation. Um, but then there's that part of me that like is recognizing like this could be great for my career. I could really do a lot, right? So we could say that like that was the firefighter, and the other part was maybe the executive, right? Because there's three main parts to most internal family systems therapy. There is the firefighter, there is the executive, and then the third part, the three main part is the exile. Who do you think the exile is?
The black sheep.
The black sheep. It's obviously the part that we're pushing away, right? So if we've got a part that controls danger and we have a part that runs the show, they're both acting in concert in some ways, if they're actually working together, to push aside something that we don't want to think about, right? So yeah, the black sheep. The black sheep is typically the inner child because the inner child holds our shame.
Okay, that
Make
makes
sense?
sense.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool beans. All right. So when we start with those three parts, where we can see how parts can kind of not work well, right? Because that danger, danger, danger was the fact that for me, right, that I would be seen and that I would be seen as stupid. The shame of my inner child is not being is being seen and being seen as being stupid or wrong or bad in some way, right? So for me, that's what cultivated the fireman who my fireman who got involved and said, oh no, no, we can't be a part of this. We got to walk away, right? So That's the basic parts. Those are the three basic parts. Now, if you get further into internal family systems, there's each of those parts can kind of be broken into two or more pieces. And for the work that we did on the cruise, we actually had more involved parts that are basically were tied to being on the high seas. So the firefighter is now the pirate. Um, the protector, who is a part of the fire, like, of the original firefighter, is now the buoy.
Okay.
Um, the inner critic, which is a part of our executive, is now the anchor. I have my sheet here, but I also drew all over it, so I don't want to show you. The more helpful side of the executive, that is now the first mate, because that's collaboration that's coming together. And then we also have the visionary, which is the part of us that we want to kind of like pull in and be more like. And then we also have our inner child, or the exile. So now we have 6 parts in this one. So we've broken the parts down. So they're a little bit more specific. Make
Mm.
sense? Okay. So these are really interesting now.
I enjoy learning, yes.
Yes. So as far as the parts are concerned, right, can you see how we could use those parts, and we could talk about those parts
They're all a little bit different. Hmm.
right. Yeah, or bring out, like, talk to these different parts. So if we're doing typical IFS and we're doing typical parts work, it's internal. So and when I give these types of assignments and I do parts work with my clients, it's more of an internal conversation. We're just like talking like you and I are talking, and I'm having that person kind of imagine having a conversation with that person, with whatever that part is. When we bring psychodrama into it, now we're externalizing this part's work. So if we do externalizing within, like, let's say a group context, right? Like you and I know group a lot because we're working in substance use disorder treatment. We do a lot of group therapy. We're exposed to a lot of group therapy. Imagine now we've got somebody who, like, comes in with a story like the one I just told about Basil van der Kolk, and and not having that opportunity to talk to him, not taking the opportunity rather to talk to him. So let's take that and we can say, okay, well, what parts of me were activated, right? My fireman, in this case, we'll say the pirate, like, danger, 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 we can't do this, right? Is kind of speaking at that point in time. So if I wanted to talk to that person, I would look around the room and I'd pick somebody out of the room and I'd say, okay, you're going to play my firefighter. You're going to play my pirate. And I'd have a conversation with that person. I'm externalizing it. When we talk about psychodrama, what we're actually doing is there's actual roles that we're all playing in there. And I have my notes here, so I'm going to pull up my notes on psychodrama, so I can tell you exactly what those roles are, because I'm not an expert in this just yet. Okay, so the parts in psychodrama is your protagonist, which is the main person that is going to be enacting their drama. Makes sense. Okay. Then we have auxiliaries, which are people in the group that are chosen to play different parts of the drama. So if we're doing a parts work drama, these people are playing the different parts. Make sense? Okay.
Hmm.
So then we also have the director, and this is not really like a director, like, you need to do what I'm telling you to do, like it would be like on a film set. This is more of a guide. This is
Okay.
somebody who's kind of facilitating and helping. A lot of times in the psychodramas that I've been a part of and I've witnessed, the director is more of a person that kind of comes along and says something that they're noticing that's going on in that drama, maybe whispers it to the person who is needing to be speaking, whether it be the protagonist or the auxiliary person, and saying something like, giving a bit of text and then saying, if it's right, state it. If it's wrong, change it. Right. So you're giving them an idea of something that they could say at that point in time. Or giving them some things like suggestions and things like that. Maybe helping them to process that a little bit. and prompting them to maybe do something like along the lines of switching roles, right? So when we switch roles, then if I say, well, you're going to be my pirate for a little while, and you're going to talk to me as if you were my pirate. And as I'm talking to you, I kind of have like an aha moment. So now I need to switch. Now I need to be the pirate and I did talk as my pirate so that I can kind of process this little aha moment a little bit further. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. All righty. And then we have our audience who kind of sits and watches. And so their participation is being a part of it, but not kind of speaking into it. In these types of situations, one of the things that as an audience member you can do is flag down the director. And in the one that I participated in was Amy and Carrie are typically the directors. So if one person is kind of like helping the protagonist or some of the auxiliaries, and somebody in the audience sees or says something, they can flag down one of them and says like, hey, I'm noticing this. Did you see that? And they can either bring it in or not bring it in, right? So that's some of the things, but the observance. So we go through all of this. The protagonist then, once we're done with our drama, sits quietly, and the auxiliary and the people, and as well as the audience, processes what they saw, what they noticed, and what they felt in this particular psychodrama, right? So we were doing parts work. So the psychodrama that I participated in was where an individual was chosen by the group to play out a drama that they wanted to work through, something that they wanted to work on. This person that was chosen as the protagonist wanted to work on separating a little bit from their inner critic. And so they chose two of the parts and had two people play those parts that represented the critical part of who they are. Then they wanted to choose like who do they want with them as they're going on this journey and having this conversation. So they chose their inner child, who this person has been trying to build, facilitate a better relationship with. And they also chose their higher self, the person that they would like to be, which was described as their golden phoenix. This is somebody that's like, this is the part of them that's glowing, that's full of life, that's full of love, that's full of everything. And then they went and they chose from within the group. They also chose a family member that they felt like was tied into that critical part of who they are, which I think most of us would have, that critical part of who we are yet is tied to a family member of some sort, right? Like, I think every one of us, if we did this, right, we would have that. So that's something we could all be the same on. And ironically, guess what part I was chosen to play?
I'm gonna say the inner critic.
Oh no, the opposite.
Really?
Yes,
How'd that go?
that's what I wanted to talk about.
I want to hear
So
that.
yeah, so that like this has just been the build up to get us to talking about what my experience was like. I was chosen to play the Phoenix. I
Okay.
was chosen to play the part of this person who is the most attention grabbing. Now we jump back to that story about Bessel van der Kolk. I am not a person who's comfortable with attention.
Not at all.
Not at all. This is not who I am. I'm actually like, I could see myself getting like flushed just thinking about it, right?
Mhm.
This is not something I'm comfortable with at all. And I'm just like, holy crap on a cracker. Like, I got to stand in front of these people and like be, like the positive golden, like, come with me. I'll take you to a better place in life. Like, holy crap on a cracker. I have to be, I have to be seen. And I
Mhm.
remember experiencing like just being so scared, not knowing what to say. Because, yeah, had somebody chosen me to be the person that I see myself as, I would have been the critic. I would have totally been a critic because I'm so comfortable with criticizing myself, right? And but I wasn't. I was chosen as the opposite person, and that was so crazy to me to be the opposite of what I was. It was definitely a stretch. It was definitely a very growing experience for me. Interestingly enough, the person who was picked to play the critic should have been the Golden Phoenix. And we
So,
had similar experiences. That person and I, both had a really, really hard time. And afterwards, that person said that when they were trying to access that inner critic in them so that they could say things that were critical, right, to play that role, they actually had difficulty with words. They had difficulty hearing what the director was kind of cueing them to say, right? Giving them some ideas, because that's the role of the director, is to kind of guide us through all this. And they couldn't hear what was that person was saying, which if we remember like what happens to us as adrenaline is pumping in our systems, as our adrenaline is raising and we're feeling that fight or flight feeling, right? One of the big things that happens to us is that we lose the ability to hear and we lose the ability to speak because less oxygen is going to the Broca's and Wernicke's area of our brain. So what that tells us is this other person. I mean, I was having a hard time as well, like just staying focused, but they were having a much harder time because they couldn't hear and they couldn't speak. They couldn't find words while they were trying to play that inner critic. And what that tells me is this person was feeling very triggered in that moment, was really, really having a hard time. And this is a person who has a lot of experience and has done a lot of work on themselves. And afterwards, as we were all talking about playing these opposite roles for ourselves, and ironically, when we were kind of closing it out and the protagonist was moving people around, they put me and the inner critic together, like because we needed to work together, right? And I'm like, we do need to work together. Like, I need some of your like more positivity and comfort with being in front of people, and you need a little bit more of my criticality and like holding us back, right? So I just thought it was the most interesting thing that we, in the end, like we came together and we ended up being like that pair. But the physical experience of being there, the physical experience of like being a part of this group and like playing that was really, really striking for me. With that caveat that we can't step into these things and do them until we're ready. Because that other person, they felt it hard.
yeah.
And for a couple of days, like they continued to talk a little bit about what was going on for them in that moment. Like
So I'm stuck with that.
yeah, it stuck with her. It stuck with me too, because one of the things that I was told after we kind of did all of this is that after you experience a psychodrama, when you work through your psychodrama, you will notice yourself maybe acting a little bit differently or feeling a little
Mhm.
bit differently. And what I personally noticed myself doing was I always wear a baseball cap and I wear it low. And we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago about how I wear it low for self-preservation. I don't want to make eye contact with people. Well, after the psychodrama, I stopped wearing my hat. I
You're
noticed
more
right away.
self-aware.
I was like, I don't need this.
So it helped you, hurt
Like
the other.
well, it didn't hurt them. I wouldn't say it hurt them. I would say that
Slowed them down a little bit.
it helped them to see where they've been hiding or what they've been hiding from, like what they've pushed so far away that they can't focus on it, that they can't look at it, they can't talk about it, that they've shoved it in such a deep box someplace in there. Because one of the other things that they had said and they had asked when we were like processing everything with it a couple of days later was that um they asked like do you find that people have uncovered memories after they experience something like that? And the people in charge were like, yeah, that can totally happen, because they said, I think I'm remembering stuff that I forgot about, that I pushed aside.
Isn't that the point of the whole thing, though? To
Right.
eventually get to that uncovering
Mhm.
of that push down emotions?
Right. And so on one hand, they were excited about it, and on the other hand, they were really, hurt, and like, well, I've got stuff to work on. On the same token, though, I also started to notice things, because we did this as a big group, but then a few days later, we came back together and we worked on it. How do you do this in individual therapy? So I paired off with somebody and I worked on my inner child, because I was like, where is this fear of being seen coming from? And I'm like, I think it's like from my inner child, that my inner child was, and if I think about what I was like as a child, like I won beauty contests. I got a lot of attention. I was precocious. I'd sit on my uncle or my grandfather's knee and tell them stories, and people would sit around and they would love to listen to me talk. And they were, really interested in me, but I don't allow myself to be that person anymore. So I was like, let me work there. I think that would be an interesting place to work. And as I sat there and talked about my inner child and what she was like, and you know who she was, I started to realize something about myself, that people see that in me, but I don't see it in
Mhm.
myself. That aspect of who I am, that that part of me that draws people in, that sees me as beautiful, that finds me enjoyable to talk to, right? As much as other people see that in me, I don't see it in myself.
Mhm.
But that part of me is what makes me a good therapist, because that's what my clients see in me.
Catch 22, isn't it?
Yeah. Interesting how that kind of it came all the way back around. I'm like, the thing that makes me good at what I do is the thing I'm so afraid to touch.
Because it might hinder what you do. Yep. That's where I'm stuck too.
Yeah.
I confronted my inner child this weekend against my mom.
Okay. What happened there?
Uh, my mother is a very, they help everybody type family.
Mhm.
So I guess right now their current undertaking, they have her best friend and her back when they both worked in the school district. They would take on, surprisingly enough, uh, young Hispanic kids who were just new to the school district and had nothing.
Yeah.
So she's got this new one. He's got wrapped up in some child case. And so my mom was telling me about it. It was like a Saturday afternoon. And I lived a Brown experience in this country. I know what it is. And I've tried to explain that to her as a child of why my childhood was so rough and why I am the way I am today. So she's explaining to me, and I'm trying to listen, be a good son and listen. And at some point, I said, Mom, I don't want to hear this anymore. And she's like, Why? Why don't you want to hear this? I said, Mother, because since I was, I don't know, 8 or 9, I tried to explain to you my experience as a brown man in this country. And you always told me that I don't deserve to feel that way. She said, Well, Ben, I never told you don't deserve to feel that way. I would just try to tell you that you don't have to think that way. And I said, Well, mother, you can't explain to somebody who's brown how to feel if you're a white woman. And we went kind of back and forth with it. And she finally came to the understanding now that she's dealing with an outside case, but seeing the effects of, oh, you don't have a rich family to back you. You don't have these little things
Hmm.
of, oh, this is what you feared, but I couldn't acknowledge it because I knew I protected you. And we kind of came to that. She still won't get it. She still really struggles with that but that's her love for me as her son, and I will always understand that.
Right.
Once I finally just said, "No, mom, you're not getting away with telling me my emotions at 8 years old,"
Hmm.
and we had it out. We had a really good conversation. We went back and forth, but I stood up for myself. I'm like, "No, mom, you're not going to
Yeah.
explain to me what it's like to be a brown child in America. We're not doing that."
Hmm.
A second one I did this week, talking about, yeah, I did very well this weekend on,
We're doing so much work these days, Ben.
yeah, I'm just finally following through with things. So
Yeah.
Saturday is my big cleaning day, and Alicia's at the house now, back and everything. and get up 10:30. I was just like, you know what? I'm cleaning the house. So I just turn on my music, and I turn on, music that she could sing along to, and hopes to coax her into, oh, this is an exciting thing. This is what he does. So she's like, oh, what are you doing? I said, this is Saturday. Me and the dogs, we clean on Saturday. So I'm not waiting for you to leave the house. Either you can be part of it, or when I'm in your living room, switch living rooms. That's what I'm giving you.
Mhm.
Well, what are you going to do? I said, nope, this is what we do. I'm just going to clean. If you want to make remarks after, you can do that, but this is what we do. She said, okay, do your cleaning thing. She started singing along with the music that I had on, and we had a great time.
Mhm.
The last one I did is I've talked on this show about it, the Dan Lebitard show with Stu Gatz. I've been following for 20 years. And on Friday, we heard the news that David Sampson, one of the people on the show, his daughter passed away from brain cancer.
Mm.
And David Sampson, if you're a Marlins fan, you will absolutely hate this man because he's destroyed the Marlins. And for me, I've listened to him now for the last 5 years, and before I looked at him as he's a bad person because of all the things he did as a Marlins, but learning how he is as a human and his daughter passing away affected me and my best friend, like physically, because it's like, damn, we know this guy now. We know he's a better guy than a lot of the world thinks. So Alicia on Friday was just like, hey, what's wrong with you right now? I said, I'm just watching this thing on Samson. She's like, what happened? I said, you know, nothing. You don't, you usually don't like hearing about this. She said, no, but I can tell you're affected by this. Like, explain to me. I might not understand it, but just tell me what you need to say. And I went through the whole show's history and just talked it out with her. And at the very end, I said, hey, I know you probably don't understand anything I said. Thank you for listening. She gave me a big hug and said, that's what I'm here for.
Mm.
But those are all the things over the last, 8 years I barely struggled with, just opening up on the things that mattered to me and presenting them in a way that mattered.
Yeah.
This weekend, no shit's given. This is Ben. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need to process. This is where I'm at. And it
So
felt great
what? Yeah. So it was a positive experience for you.
all around.
Yeah.
Tons. Because then I think a lot of it was I was just scared to open up and just prefacing that, hey, I know this probably doesn't mean much to you, but this is something that matters to me and I just need to get it off my chest.
Mm-hmm.
Took away any emotion that that person would give back because I already preface it. I know this is not top of your list. This is just something I verbally need to get out of my head.
Yeah.
Allowed it because there was no expectations of a response then. It was just, okay, I heard you. It got it out of my head. That's the only response I needed. But for the last 8 years, I thought I needed a legitimate response back on something that she has no care about. It was like me listening to her talk about Howard Stern. I don't give a damn, but I know it's important to her, thus the response would be something back to her that's important.
Right.
And that I struggled with for a while. So this weekend, yeah, I'm Ben. I'm full of emotions, and I'm going to need to talk them out every once in a while. And I wasn't scared of it this weekend. Just that's who I am.
Yeah.
Let's talk it out.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of work on the inner child, the inner critic.
Yeah.
I'm telling little Ben, like, we deserve to talk about our goofy show. If that goofy show is holding a spot up here that's hard for me to work out, I deserve for myself to speak on it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I deserve to put myself in the center of attention once in a while. It's
Yep.
not a bad thing. Nothing bad's going to happen to me if I do that.
That's what I learned this week. And then, and then some of it I also come to a true understanding, especially with my brother and my mother, is I'm never going to be the full center of the circle. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's different growing up with an autistic brother or sister. I think that's something you inherently know. It hurts and it sucks. I'll never be number one in my family's life, but inherently, like we said about your inability to be the head of the show, is a lot of qualities that make me who I am and great at what I do come from the hardest thing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And is it really undoing that to undo what this version of me is? Not always.
No.
It's one that I live with. I understand it. I process it.
Right.
But it's a challenge that day in and day out. It provides more good for me than bad if I allow it.
Right. But I like to use my own stories to help people. We're getting close to time, so we're gonna have to wrap after this. Um, but one of the things that like I'm very transparent with my clients. Like, I self-disclose probably a little bit more than some other therapists might do. Like I would share that story about, Bessel van der Kolk to talk about how like I struggle with sometimes with some anxiety issues and it's okay. We all have it. We just have to recognize it and learn how to work with it. But I will self-disclose some of that information to help people to understand. And I will tell stories about my parents as well. And I will kind of get into some of the harder stuff that happened and like how I had to handle it. And a lot of people will come to me and say, "Wow, like you've been through a lot. You've had to deal with a lot." And I'm like, "You're right, I have." Um, but I wouldn't change it for the world because going through all that stuff and having to grow so much patience and so much understanding and so much empathy, if I didn't do that, if I didn't go through those hard times, well, then I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Champion you are today.
Yeah. And if I wasn't this person, then I wouldn't be able to help so many people. So I'm grateful for the pain because the pain made me stronger.
You gotta be.
So that's it for today. We will see you all again in about 2 weeks. Take care. Have a good one.
Adios, everybody.
Real Champions Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9, Psychodrama. What does it mean to be a champion when that's your name? The Real Champions Podcast is co-hosted by Heather Champion and Benjamin Champion. It's edited by Heather Champion. Produced by Maitri Counseling Services, all rights reserved. Questions or comments can be referred to Heather at Maitri Therapy, MAITRI-therapy.com.
You are not alone. Remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK. For local help, dial 211 on your phone to be connected to resources in your area. If you experience mental health or substance abuse issues, please call the National Alliance or Mental Health or NAMNI at 1-800-950-NAMNI. Or in a crisis, text NAMI, NAMI, to 741-741. Check out the NAMI website, nami.org, for additional resources.